What does it mean to truly understand another person's pain or joy? What if our thoughts and emotions are not isolated events, but part of a larger, interconnected web of consciousness? What if understanding another person's pain or joy isn't just about observing their experience, but about becoming intrinsically linked to it, much like particles in a quantum field, influencing one another across space and time? Quantum psychology explores these very ideas, suggesting that the mind doesn't operate in a vacuum but interacts with the world in ways that challenge our conventional understanding of self and other. Neurotheology invites us to consider not only how we process emotions, but also how our neural architecture shapes our moral decisions, our social bonds, and our capacity for compassion. At its core, quantum psychology posits that consciousness may function in a non-linear, non-local manner, where thoughts, emotions, and even identities overlap and influence one another. This raises fascinating questions about empathy. Is it merely a product of our cognitive abilities, our capacity to imagine ourselves in someone else's shoes, or is it a deeper, more fundamental connection, woven into the very fabric of how we perceive reality? If our minds are entangled, much like particles in quantum systems, could empathy be more than just a psychological phenomenon? Could it be a reflection of this deeper, inherent interconnectedness? Imagine a scenario where you witness someone in distress, a friend grappling with loss, a stranger in pain, and almost instantaneously your brain reacts. This immediate neural response is the work of systems such as mirror neurons, which fire in a way that mirrors the observed emotions of others. Researchers like Rizzolatti have shown that these neurons provide the raw data for our emotional experiences, creating a biological substrate for what we call empathy. However, this neural activation is only one part of the story. The signals generated by our brain's mirror systems are then processed through higher cognitive functions. Think of this as the brain interpreting these signals, translating the raw activity into a coherent awareness of another's emotional state. A process that has been illuminated by the work of scientists such as Singer, who demonstrated how the anterior insular and anterior cingulate cortex help us become consciously aware of these feelings. Yet neither neural activity nor cognitive processing operates in isolation. Our everyday social practices, whether in the form of communal gatherings, rituals, or even informal conversations, play a crucial role in reinforcing and refining these neural pathways. When we engage in practices like meditation, prayer, or other community rituals, we are not merely participating in a social event. We are actively reinforcing the circuits in our brain that enable us to feel and interpret the emotions of others. If we were to remove any one of these three elements, the neural substrate, the cognitive processing, or the social reinforcement, the entire system of effective empathy would begin to unravel. The raw neural data would remain uninterpreted, cognitive awareness would lack the material to work on, and without the continuous feedback from social practice, the capacity for empathetic connection would diminish. This interdependency illustrates that the integration of neurological, cognitive, and social dimensions is not optional. It is the very foundation upon which a robust and meaningful empathy is built. At the heart of our ability to understand others lies a remarkable brain region known as the temporoparietal junction, or TPJ. This area serves as the critical crossroads where the differentiation between self and other begins. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that not only reflects your image, but also allows you to see yourself from another's perspective. Studies employing functional magnetic resonance imaging have revealed that the TPJ lights up when individuals engage in tasks that require them to step outside their own viewpoint, effectively bridging the gap between personal experience and external observation. Researchers like Rebecca Sachs have demonstrated that when the TPJ is disrupted, our capacity for perspective-taking falters, underscoring its importance in the tapestry of empathy. But the TPJ does more than just separate self from other. It is integral to forming a coherent cognitive picture of our social world. The neural differentiation that occurs in the TPJ provides the scaffolding for the cognitive processes that allow us to understand who we are in relation to the people around us. This understanding, in turn, shapes our social identity and informs our interactions within a community. The interplay is seamless. Neural mechanisms facilitate cognitive distinctions, which are then expressed and reinforced within a social context. If we were to eliminate the neural aspect by, say, impairing the function of the TPJ, our ability to accurately differentiate between self and other would be compromised, leading to a breakdown in the cognitive and social components that rely on this distinction. Thus, the TPJ exemplifies the principle that empathy is not a single process, but an interdependent network where neural, cognitive, and social elements work together to create a unified experience of understanding and connection. Consider the complex moral decisions we face every day, from small acts of kindness to life-altering ethical dilemmas. At the core of these decisions lies a sophisticated interplay between emotion and reason, a balance that is deeply rooted in our neural architecture. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex, for instance, plays a pivotal role in integrating emotional input into our moral judgments. The work of researchers like Joshua Green has provided compelling evidence that when we are faced with a moral quandary, our brain does not rely solely on cold logic. Instead, it harnesses emotional data as a guiding force. This neural input is then processed through the lens of ethical reasoning, a cognitive function that allows us to interpret and deliberate upon the moral significance of our emotions. When we think about what is right or wrong, we are engaging in a mental process that weighs our emotional responses against a backdrop of personal values and societal norms. This cognitive process is essential. It acts as the interpreter between our raw emotional data and the actions that follow. Social norms, meanwhile, provide the context and validation for these ethical judgments. They represent the collective wisdom and cultural standards of the communities to which we belong, ensuring that our moral reasoning is aligned with a broader social framework. The strength of this triadic relationship between the neural circuits of moral processing, the cognitive mechanisms of ethical reasoning, and the social norms that guide behavior is that each element reinforces the others. Should any one of these components be absent or weakened, the whole process would falter. Without the neural basis, our ethical reasoning would lack the emotive impetus necessary for moral action. Without the cognitive interpretation, raw emotion would remain unchanneled and potentially erratic. And without the grounding of social norms, our moral judgments would be untethered from communal values. This interdependency ensures that our capacity for compassionate moral reasoning is a truly integrated phenomenon, with each element playing an indispensable role in the creation of a cohesive moral framework. Our brains are not static entities. They are living, evolving structures capable of remarkable transformation. This dynamic quality, known as neuroplasticity, is at the heart of how empathy can be cultivated and sustained over time. Scientific research has shown that with repeated practice, such as mindfulness meditation or compassion training, the brain undergoes measurable changes. These changes are not confined to abstract neural maps. They translate into tangible behavioral and cognitive shifts. When individuals engage in regular meditation, for example, studies have documented increased activation in brain regions associated with empathy, suggesting that the very structure of the brain is being reshaped to favor empathetic engagement. This transformation is not solely the product of neural adaptation. It is intimately tied to the development of cognitive habits that align with empathetic behavior. Over time, the deliberate practice of empathy becomes internalized, forming new pathways that facilitate more automatic and instinctive responses. This cognitive habit formation is crucial. It represents the brain's ability to embed empathetic responses into its everyday functioning, making compassion a default rather than an occasional act. Yet, these neural and cognitive changes are further reinforced by social interactions. The positive feedback received from peers, the supportive environment of community gatherings, and the validation from social networks all serve to cement these new pathways, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of empathy. Imagine a three-legged stool where each leg represents neuroplastic change, cognitive habit formation, and social reinforcement. If even one leg is removed, the stool topples, illustrating that the cultivation of empathy is not possible through isolated efforts. It is the integration of these three dimensions that leads to the emergence of sustained, genuine empathy. The adaptive nature of the brain, bolstered by consistent cognitive practice and nurtured by social validation, exemplifies the holistic approach needed to truly foster an enduring empathetic capacity. In our exploration of empathy, we arrive at a realm that stretches beyond the everyday, a domain where the boundaries of self and other dissolve into a profound sense of unity. This is the space of transcendence and mystical experience, where altered neural states open a window into a reality that is both deeply personal and universally interconnected. During intense meditative or mystical experiences, the brain exhibits unique patterns of activity, such as a reduction in parietal lobe function, which correlates with a diminished sense of individual self. This neural alteration paves the way for transcendent cognition, where the usual distinctions between the self and the rest of the world begin to blur. The insights offered by neurotheologians like Andrew Newberg help us understand how these altered states are not mere anomalies, but rather integral parts of the human capacity for empathy. When the neural basis shifts, it allows for a cognitive reinterpretation of experience, one that emphasizes interconnectedness and shared identity. This cognitive transformation is often experienced as a profound unification, where the boundaries of personal identity expand to include a broader communal or even universal perspective. Such experiences are rarely solitary. They are frequently embedded within a social context, where communal practices like group meditation, ritual, or worship serve to amplify and sustain this feeling of oneness. In this triadic model of altered neural states, transcendent cognition and communal unity, each element is essential. The altered neural state provides the physiological groundwork for the experience. Transcendent cognition offers the interpretative framework that redefines our understanding of self, and communal practices supply the social reinforcement that validates and deepens the experience. Removing any one of these elements would not only diminish the intensity of the mystical experience, but would also strip it of the holistic integration that makes it profoundly transformative. It is this intricate interplay that allows us to experience what might be termed universal empathy, a form of connection that transcends ordinary interpersonal bonds and touches upon the very essence of our shared humanity.